Well, now my line work is finished and it's time to show you color, but first I'm going to go through a few things here with my drawing. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Well, let's see. Let's first just turn off and look at the line work. It looks pretty good. There's a few spotty places, like the chins might need a little bit of work later. I'm going to go ahead and do my color and I'll wait and see if it needs a little bit of cleanup. But I might clean up that, make the eyes look a little bit more matched. Again, in this picture, Ethan's very squinty, so it's really not the easiest to do. But time to get to some color. So if I turn this back on and I go in and I zoom in, I just want to show you that this line work that I did, now I could have put in a couple more lines over here. I did things pretty quick. But the line work is following existing lines. I'm not making these lines up. It's lines that are very defined. So when I turn those lines off, I'm choosing the most defined lines by the shadows in the photo. Okay? This line. The lip, it's only shown right here. I did indicate this. The color's going to do the most there. Up in the hair is a really telling area. So I'm going to get up in this area, turn this back on, turn my line work on, and see how it falls in places where there's actually lines. So people say, well, how do you make it look so good? It's because I'm drawing what's there. And where I see the darkest tones, the defining lines that define the shapes, okay? I'm not making it up. I'm not putting random lines in there. So if you look at the eyes, it's these darkest lines that are there, okay? Not putting a bunch of different lines in there, not putting a bunch of lines in here where it's very subtle tones. That'll happen with the color and the value. Okay, so now I'm ready to start my color. So first thing I do is I go to my color layer, unlock it, and I turn the opacity back up because I'm going to use it to select colors. I need to make a new layer. So I'm going to go in to my menu and call this one color. The color layer needs to sit below the line work and above the photo. So whenever you're on a layer and you go up to new layer, it'll put the new layer right above it. So if you know where it needs to fall, you click on the layer below where it needs to sit, and then when you go new layer, it'll be right there above it. So I've got everything set up right. I think I'm going to go ahead and lock this layer again so I don't draw or paint on it. And I'm going to get on my color layer. I'm going to get my eyedropper first. And I'm going to go in and sample a color for the flesh tone. You don't want to choose in the highlights. You don't want to choose in a shadow area. Now, some photos get very dark, so you have to choose something in a light middle tone area. Again, Ethan, very light complexion. This photo is very light. So I'm going to try and choose right in here where it looks like some good, clean color. So I click in there, and it gives me a flesh tone here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this photo, and I'm going to make some swatches. So I get my brush, and I'm going to get a little bigger brush, and I'm going to make a swatch. And if I look at that, that to me looks like it's going to be too dark for his overall basic complexion. Now I am going to lighten and burn. So that's one thing that I test. I get the burn tool, and I come in and I do a little bit of a burn, and if I look at this, it holds some nice color, so I like that. And remember to check that you're on midtones. And then when I get the dodge tool, and I come in, and again, it stays pretty clean. So I'm going to Command Z, oops, to get out of the burning and dodging, and that's a possibility, but I'm going to think still that that's a little too dark. So I click on my swatch down here, and I go up and I look at something a little brighter. So I'm going to move up into here and see the difference there. And what my hope kind of is since I'm in that same range and family, when I burn, maybe my burn will be more like this, and then I'll have highlights on top of that. So I'm going to go OK to this, and I'm going to come over here, oops, get back on my brush. And to me, and being a little more experienced, that looks like a good flesh tone. So I come over here, I double check again, I'm on my color layer, and I'm going to get a fairly big brush, and I'm going to turn that picture back on. And see, it does sort of match when I'm in these middle tone areas, so that's good. I'm going to go over the eyebrows because I'm going to put their color on top. I'm going to kind of go since we didn't have much time in class, I know I didn't get to go over this, but one thing when you're using the brush and you need to go to the eraser, those are two really important shortcut keys. So hitting B takes you to paintbrush. If you hit E, it will take you to the eraser. So it's automatically changed to eraser. So you can go to eraser and then you can just hit the keyboard B and it takes you right back to the brush so you can just keep working. Okay, so I have my orange filled in. Now I want to fill in this white, but there's a real important thing with white. You don't use pure white. So with the white, I'm going to go in, I'm going to get my eyedropper, and I'm going to click somewhere in this just lighter tone black, because if you just use white, you aren't able to burn and dodge on white. If you get a gray, you're able to burn in some darker areas and dodge to get the lighter areas. So you want more of the middle tone when you're working with white. So I'm going to hit this, I'm going to come in here, and I do need to be a little bit more precise here. Off again. Well, actually, I'm going to go show the eyes, and then I'll get off and finish this. Actually, I'm going to show black also, because just like with white, you can't use solid black. So I'm going to get my eyedropper, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to select this. See how that's a gray tone? That'll be perfect. And get my brush, and come in here and color it. I'm going to get in here, and I'm going to pick the lightest tone in this one because these are really dark. And then I click on it. And then I say, well, you know what? I'm going to move right up in here. That's about the lightest tone I think I can get away with. And then I'm just going to paint with it. I don't need a swatch of this. It's so small. I'll be able to select from it. So I'll get my small brush. And I'm going to get in here and paint the white of the eye. Okay, I'm just going to do one eye, but I'm going to use the same color on here. I'm just going to burn it more there. Same over here. Looks a little bit red, but I'm going to fill that in there. Okay, and then I'm going to get my eye color and my tear duct color. So I get that eyedropper again. I come in here and I select a little bit of color. And then I get my brush and oopsie, let's do that again. Get this pink color, it's not changing, there we go. Get my brush and that. Okay, now eye color. I'm going to come in here and try and get some kind of, again for this, I'm going to choose the lightest tone I can. Oops. And then I'm going to go down here and click it. And I happen to know that he had blue eyes. So if I look at this, it's choosing grays in the red zone. So I'm going to come up here in the blue zone. Okay, but it's still there in that gray that it selected. So I'm just going to move to where I get it looking kind of blue. Something like that. Maybe I even go bluer. Okay, and then I'm going to get my brush, and this kind of comes from experience, I must say. Okay, and then I can just go solid here because I've got my pupil solid. Well, almost solid. That's going to take a little cleanup too. It's one reason why that eye doesn't look so good. And come over here and fill this in. So I've got a little bit of color in my tear duct. I have the white of the eyes and I have the iris color here. So now I'm going to go up and select a hair color. Hair color again, you're going to select some sort of a middle tone, something that has the feel of the main color of the hair. So I'm going to come in here and look at this color. Not bad. Knowing that he's kind of a blonde, really, I might go and just nudge it up a little bit. Ugh, not good. So I think that'll be good. It's a nice clean color, and then it'll burn into those colors. So I'm going to go darken it. Okay, and I'm going to put a swatch for this because there's a lot of hair color here. So I'm going to make sure that I put a swatch up. So a tricky thing to do is the eyebrows and the lips. So what I normally do for the eyebrows and the lips is for the eyebrows I get the hair color. So I get the hair color, get my brush, and I get a new layer. So I don't do it on the same layer as the color. I go to a new layer and I call it lips, eyebrows. Lips, eyebrows. The reason I do this is I paint it solid, but then I lower the opacity to let the flesh tone show through because eyebrows are not very thick normally. Now there are some people that have very thick eyebrows. But for most people, they're fairly light, so the flesh tone kind of shows through. So I come in here, and you can turn off the color layer, and just come in and put some light eyebrows painted in there. To the lip area, and I'm going to sample. I'm going to go ahead and get this darker tone here, this upper lip. Get my brush. I'm going to turn off the line work also in this case. And make sure I'm on my lips and eyebrows layer. And you look how they taper down into the corner. So they don't full out and round along there. Okay. And then I am going to go a little bit lighter for the lower lip. So I'm going to double click on my color swatch and get something that keeps some color to it. Instead of going so gray, this should work. Okay, now I'm going to turn on my flesh tone And when I look at this, I'm going to kind of fill this in a little bit more solid. And then I'm going to look at my layers, get on here, and I'm going to lower the opacity. And if you look, it just makes, I don't know, gotta get this again. Let me turn that on. So by lowering the opacity, it just blends in a little bit. That's too low. So I have it down around 85. 85, plenty. Now I do want to do one thing. Since I have that line work up in there, I'm going to match that. Just taper this in a little bit better. The next step you have to do to your color is make sure everything's filled in solid. So I'm going to go to the background and I'm going to go Edit, Fill, and say Color, and pick a color that is kind of bright and put it in, and then I'm going to turn off the photo, and what that does is it reveals all the little gaps, and you have to look at all the gaps and fill in the color for those. So I'm going to get off here and do that, but that's the steps to the color. I'm going to put up another one tomorrow that will show how to burn and dodge. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my eyedropper. I'm going to sample the color wherever it is next to it and fill in any gaps I have coming around the edge here and up in there, and clean up the eyes a little bit, but you need to fill those gaps before you do any burning and dodging. Hopefully this helps you begin the color part.